Alrighty. Good evening. Hi, Grace.
Hi, Noeline.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing good. The even with the weather and the cold and hot and cold and hot and cold, I'm good. And I thank
Yes,
God for it. Thank you for asking.
you're welcome.
Alrighty. So we just jump right into it. So this week's
Mm-hmm.
session is a wellness session, and our guest mentor is Grace Karaoke, who is also kind of like our in-house therapist.
Mm.
Today we'll be speaking about on, or rather, she'll be taking us through healing from shame. So once
Mm-hmm.
again, for those of us who've not encountered, met with, joined us when Grace was has been with us in past events, I'm just going to put her center stage and then read her bio to introduce her to the. All right, I think I made a mistake there, but I'm just going to go ahead and read Grace's bio. So, Grace
Mm.
Karaoke is a seasoned marriage and family therapist whose passion is to empower individuals, families, organizations, and in turn, the society to live authentically and be able to effectively and successfully navigate through life transitions. She has been able to live out her passion both in the USA and in Kenya. Her overseas experience has given her a unique edge to relate to and effectively work with individuals, families, and organizations from diverse populations. Grace holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Christian ministry and a Master of Arts degree in marriage and family therapy. She's a registered
Mm.
member of the National Certified Counselors in the USA, as well as an accredited member of the Kenya Counseling and Psychological Association. While practicing in the USA, she was a duly licensed clinical professional counselor with the states of North Carolina and Maryland. As a professional therapist, she is committed to providing client centered support to inspire, empower, and enable her clients to reach their goals. She facilitates personalized therapy sessions for individuals, couples, families, and organizations. She's a consultant with Anchor Relationship Network and offers substance abuse assessments, treatment, and training. She provides counseling and she has also been contracted to provide employee assistance program services to corporate employees and has had above average reviews. Grace's main passion is empowering marriages, individuals, and families. She does this through group sessions, family sessions, couple sessions, and individual sessions. She has facilitated groups such as bridal showers, corporate sessions on marriage and parenting, youth sessions, family sessions on areas of growth, crisis intervention, grief, and other family transitions. Karibu sana, Grace.
Thank you so much, Noeline.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Alrighty, I
Yes.
hand it over
Mhm.
to you. I just to
Yes.
introduce this. I know you've been running a series on healing from shame on the WhatsApp group that we have, and you've covered shame
Mhm.
from different angles. I'll let you
Yes.
just jump straight into it. You'll guide me
Mm.
on the PowerPoint. Today in the
Mm.
morning, when I was putting up the post, I didn't have a reference point to put. And no, shame is not one of those things we are very open to talk about.
Yes.
It's one
Yes.
you almost want to hide when you think
Mm.
about it. But after I posted, I remembered in primary school always being
Mhm.
told same on you, shame on you, and it becomes almost like a invisible load, an invisible burden that you because you keep being told a small thing same on you, mombi, another thing same on you, another like okay. Anyhow, that's my childhood experience with it, constantly being told shame on you, shame on you, shame on you. So I'll hand it over to you to speak about it.
Yes. Right, right. Now, what we do need to do is to actually start with defining shame. So there is a very simple definition. I think my PowerPoint has a more in-depth one, a psychological one. But as
I
you
add
put
it.
it up,
Okay.
huh? As you put
As
it
I
up,
said,
I'll just yeah, I will just share. Even from without, even before I read it, I will say that shame is actually a feeling that we have, a nagging feeling that keeps coming up in our mind, and the feeling comes from the thought, there is something wrong with me. There is something inherently wrong with me. And so that is basically what shame is, and we shall be talking more about it. So if you can run the PowerPoint, I can, our people can see it so that I can explain more. And so we are looking at, yeah, you can go to the next slide. So we are looking at definitions of shame, and it's very important for us to do this. So shame is a feeling of embarrassment or humiliation that grows out of the perception that one has done something dishonorable, immoral, or improper. We feel objectified and exposed as inherently flawed or defective before the presence of a viewing or judging other. So the story that you have given, Noeline, each one of us, I'm sure, we have a story of humiliation where in front of people, someone who held authority over us was acted in a way or talked to us in a way where we felt embarrassment, deep embarrassment, because they did it in a public way. That's why we are saying in the presence of somebody who is viewing and has the capability to judge you. And that is what now causes one to feel ashamed and to feel embarrassed. But most the most difficult one to embrace, not to embrace, but to wrap around, is usually humiliation. Then shame is being criticized and judged over things we cannot change about ourselves. It is being labeled because of a mistake we have done. Shame is an inward experience that something is wrong with me and I can't do anything to change it. So we feel those feelings of helplessness. I can't. So for instance, if I am being criticized, judged because I'm a Kikuyu, there is nothing I can do about that, or because I come from Nyeri or Kiambu, or because I am this tribe or that tribe, or because my family is, I come from a single parent home. If I am being judged over things I cannot change, or because I'm light skinned or I'm dark skinned, those are things I'm being criticized about, which have something to do with my real me, my authentic me, and therefore it triggers feelings of powerlessness and helplessness, because what can I do? I can't change the fact that I am from that tribe or the fact that I come from that culture. Neither can I change the fact that my family is a certain way. And therefore, when that happens, then I am going to go into feelings of shame. Now, there are other ways that we humiliate, especially children. So we have a child who is in a family where the firstborn, maybe they are the middle child, or even they can be the firstborn, wherever they are in that born line. And one of them is very bright and the other one is not. And so what will happen is that adults and even teachers will start to compare this child with the other child. That causes feelings of embarrassment, or I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, there is something wrong with me, and we begin to develop a persona of shame. Let's go to the next one. So it is important for us to begin to think, as we are listening to this, begin to remind yourself, bring to memory some of the things that were done to you when you were a child and how you internalize those messages. So choosing therapy says that shame is an emotion that arises from after a person makes a choice that does not align with their values. They may believe they made this poor choice because something is inherently wrong with them. These negative and self-critical internal judgments can leave many feeling inadequate or unworthy of being loved and accepted. So very, very important. So there is what comes from outside, where people are throwing those statements to us, and there is that which comes from within ourselves, because we have some values we hold high, but then we make a mistake just like any other human being, and immediately we begin to criticize, judge, and compare ourselves with others. And that now triggers that emotion that causes us to feel like there is something really bad with me. How could I make such a stupid decision? And so we do all that stuff. Now, I need to say, sometimes this personal critical voice does not start with us. It may be coming from our memory, which is a memory of what was told to us by individuals who had authority over us, including our parents and our siblings, and then everybody else who, whether it is a Sunday school teacher, a teacher at school, somebody in the community that causes, and even peers, because you see, we elevate our friendships as children. Friendships are very important. And when we do mchongoano with kids and we hit below the belt, we hit the person, then what happens is that that person can develop feelings of shame. Let's go to the next one.
I like what you said there, Grace, because today morning I was having a conversation with my children, and I was wondering, where are these things coming from? Like, and I'm listening to some of those things, I'm like, okay, no, it's so new, but I like what you said, so now I'm going to be even more keen to hear what exactly is being said, and how is it impacting the other person who's being told, because man, they were really going at each other today morning.
Yes, and we need to understand that it may look innocent, but there are some children who will not take it to heart, and that again, the issue of or the aspect of personality plays into that. But we need to definitely be very, very careful. Now, family of origin. This is where some of the places where shame comes from. So, family of origin, childhood trauma, where there might have been abuse or neglect, poverty, or even when people have a lot of money and then dad misuses, mom misuses, or whatever happens, and then people fall from glory and now they have nothing and they are now having to beg, and we can see that causing a lot of shame within the family. Then the death of a parent or a sibling. Sometimes you lose a parent, and then as you are going to school and you're developing as a teenager, or even start dating as a young adult, you find that you might date somebody, and the moment you guys plan to get married, you go and you are being introduced to the guy's family or to the girl's family, and then when they find out that you are coming from a single parent home, they reject you. So that becomes an issue of shame. But also, we all know how widows are dealt with. And once some widows, not all of them, but there are some families who really traumatize the family of the man who has died, and his widow and children are going to be treated as outcasts, and they feel that feeling of, we are not good enough, we are not acceptable, and therefore they might go into that space of shame. Then divorce and separation, or marital stress. I do remember myself thinking that all my mom's friends, I grew up in the PCA church. So we have what we call the Women's Guild. And so I would look at my mother's friends whose marriages seemed like they didn't have a lot of outward problem. So you couldn't see the problems within the marriage. But us in our family, the problems in the marriage were very clear. We could see it. And again, my mother being a sanguine, she used to talk a lot about what she is going through. And so I remember as a child feeling that something is wrong with our family. And then, of course, when there is a lot of marital distress in the family, it will create financial stress, financial lack. And so then again, every time you open school, you don't have enough school fees, or you go to school and then 2 weeks later you are being sent home. and people can see you on the road coming home because you don't have school fees. So those are things that will cause us to develop shame. And also sibling rivalry, when children are being compared with each other, when parents are not able to balance, manage, or help their children to bridge the gaps where children are fighting a lot, where they are jealous of each other or envious of each other, or they just are conflict, they have a lot of conflict with them, then that can create feelings of shame, where one of them or both of them feel like there is something wrong with them. That's why they fight a lot. And of course, sometimes the way parents deal with, there is a simple sentence that we use when we are disappointed with our children, angry with our children, and we usually ask them, what is wrong with you? So when that statement actually is a statement that triggers shame, because that child begins to internalize, because I'm making mistakes, something is wrong with me. And so when those children become preteens and into teenagehood, they are going to not talk to their parents because they feel a lot of shame, and they don't have confidence or safety to come to dad or mom. So what they will do, they will open their hearts either to auntie, or they are going to talk to another family friend who is more open. And we see that happening a lot, where my child will be more open to talk to my best friend rather than me. It happens a lot, and it's an issue that needs to be explored, because part of it is normal, where a child feels there is that respect between a child and a parent, where they feel like I can't go beyond this boundary. And also parents who will feel that they cannot talk to their children, they send them to auntie, they send them to their best friend, and that creates that gap between the child and the mother, or the child and the father. And what happens is that shame enters into that relationship, and therefore we can't be vulnerable with each other, either because of fear of embarrassment, fear of being a disappointment, fear of punishment, fear of rejection. All of that can cause now that relationship to develop the feelings of fear. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is a good one, because remember, usually shame comes from there is something a mistake that I have done. So the difference between guilt and shame is very clear. Shame is feeling bad about yourself as a person because of a mistake you did. Guilt is feeling bad about what you did. In other words, simply put, is that the shame is personalizing. It's saying, I did this because I'm a bad person. Guilt is saying, I'm human, I did something wrong. So I don't own it, I don't label myself, I don't become the problem, I don't become the issue. I'm able to separate the issue from me, and therefore I can problem solve through that. So very, very important for us to know the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is good because it's an opportunity to correct, while shame is bad because it's actually an opportunity to put ourselves down, to down our worth and our esteem. Let's go to the next one. So shame is also a defense mechanism in this way, that when I hide behind the shame, and so what I do, I'm afraid of showing who I am, in terms of that I'm a human being who is flawed and I make mistakes. So when I put on shame, it's a way of covering myself and hiding, instead of me being able to come into the open and accept I did a mistake, I am not a mistake, and I can correct. I remember my son was 9 when he told me he would. That's when I started to realize my son can develop and is developing what we call perfectionistic ways of thinking. And I remember he made a mistake in a homework or something, so he didn't get what he wanted. So he said, I'm feeling so stupid, how could I not know that? And then so I had to have a conversation about that you are only 9. You are not supposed to know everything. In fact, when you get something wrong, that's an opportunity for you to be curious, to have interest, and to do some research. And then he asked me one time, he said, Mom, what if we cannot fix the mistake? And I said, then we are going to learn from it so that we do not repeat it. Now, so we need to help even our children understand that there is a difference between the action and who I am. So the action and who I am are not one and the same thing. The who I am, I'm a person who makes mistakes and who can correct the mistakes, who can learn from the mistakes and become a better version of who I am, because I'm learning from the mistakes I'm making. So the statements that we use with our children, with each other, especially even in relationships, when we ask people who thinks like that, how could you not know? When we do those things, nini mbaya na wewe? And when we call, haufikiriage, you don't think. What is wrong with you? When we do those things, we are triggering shame. And this happens even with adults at work. We have bosses that will do that. We have spouses that will do that. We have parents that will do that to their children. So even friends that will do that. So we want to be careful how people are experiencing what we are saying, how we are communicating our disappointment in their choices. We also know, even with church, we do know that sometimes the pulpit becomes a judgment space where we are being judged because of our mistakes, and we are not being told how do we come out of there. And thankfully, in our spirituality, we do know, for those who are Christians, we do know that the Bible has answers for the times when we feel guilty and even the time when we feel shame. So when we think about, again, this is showing from Mind Journal, where they are saying this is the difference between guilt and shame. It's important. Guilt related to our actions and behavior, while shame is an intense feeling of a painful feeling. And then guilt is a focus on moral values, while shame focuses on our self-worth and feelings of being loved. And I like to add to love the word of acceptability. So being loved and acceptable. And now for when we talk about shame at work, we bring in love, acceptance, and competence. So love, acceptance, and competence being how much I believe that I am a person who can be able to do anything I put my mind to. And of course, we want to look at that within reason, within our reality, so that, again, we are not being grandiose. We are able to say, me, I know if this thing happens, I have the tools, I have the resilience to be able to handle it. So we are not going into helplessness, which triggers a lot of shame. Then guilt is a natural and healthy response that we feel when we attempt something we shouldn't. And then shame is an unhealthy and personal response that we feel when we do something wrong. Again, the difference between guilt and shame is that shame, we personalize the mistake, while guilt, we are able to depersonalize it from who we are, because we believe we can correct it. And this is what also in psychology and in coaching and in the area of personal development, we talk about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. The growth mindset looks at opportunities. Fixed mindset is very deterministic. If you did one and you added another one, it became 2. It can never be 0, and it can never be anywhere else. But when we think about the growth mindset, and in social settings and growth and personal growth, we know that you can be down in the mud, and tomorrow you can be flying with the eagles, because of choices and because of abilities that we have, and the fact that we as human beings, we are very dynamic and we are very resilient. So shame causes us to think we can't do anything about something, but guilt tells us this is an opportunity for us to evaluate and to make different choices so that we can be able to survive the situation, but also to thrive because of the situation. Let's go to the next one. All right, so let's talk about the formation of shame. And this is a very good diagram that I found online that I think all of us can be able to take some time and look at it, because I made a mistake. And then there is the issue of, oh my goodness, I am a terrible human being, then I better run away from the situation. So we start avoiding. And how many of us have spouses, friends, and children who will not take accountability for what they did? They always are going to blame something, blame someone, blame a circumstance, not owning. And then now the internal thinking, everyone hates me, I hate me, I should just stay away from everyone, I am such a burden anyway, there is no point, I am always going to suck, I am so worthless. You see that spiral? It starts there, I made a mistake, and then it goes all the way down because I'm comparing myself with others, I am judging myself very harshly, I am criticizing myself very harshly. And sometimes the reason why we do that is because we have a memory of what happened in our first formative years, maybe from the age of 0 to 10 or 0 to 13, there is a template that was laid by the way we were socialized by the environment we grew up in. So this is a good one. First of all, we need to understand that everyone makes a mistake, and I have already explained that mistakes, they don't mean that I will always make mistakes. It means I can learn so that I don't make another mistake. That's why we are human. That is what we call vulnerability, and vulnerability is actually the antidote to shame. Because vulnerability makes us get out of the fear of the unknown, and shame keeps us in the fear of the unknown, because we can't predict how people will act if they know we made those mistakes. Because in the past, when we have made a mistake, we have been shamed, we have been humiliated, we have been punished severely, we have been made to feel terrible. And so we are constantly self-preserving. Let's go to the next one. All right, so the origin of shame, I think I have spoken about many of these things. Intense feelings of unworthiness or being different. Personal meanings we give. We give personal meanings to being different or experiencing life different. So like what I was sharing with you guys, growing up in a home where there was open chaos at home, people could see, then it made me begin to make meanings about what it means about us as a family. It means that we are not good. It means that we are bad. It means, in fact, when I think I must have been 10 or 12, I started to think maybe even God doesn't know we exist, because my parents are both believers, but they are constantly fighting. So that means maybe God doesn't even know we exist. And that's the mind of a child. Then shame will come from rejection and abandonment during school years, and consequently through teenage and young adult experience. So if we are experiencing, people have experienced your own relatives rejecting your family for one reason or another. Now then we have parental rejection, whether it can come from not knowing who your biological father is, or being rejected by mom, because once you got born, mom left you with relatives, or even issues of death can also create those feelings of shame. So the abandonment issue is where you feel alone, you have no one to rely on, because everyone who is in your circle, they are either punishing you, or you cannot trust your environment. And therefore you feel, as a child, if you cannot trust your environment, then you feel very alone, helpless, and you don't know what to do. And some of us as adults, we are really struggling with self-doubt because of that abandonment that we felt when we were young. Romantic relationships, of course, whenever you have a romantic relationship and there's going to be a breakup, we always feel rejected and abandoned, and we feel such a deep sense of loss, and we lose self-worth, and we lose we lose self-esteem. Now, usually, whenever we have been cheated on, we always ask ourselves, what's wrong with me? Why did this person go to that other person? Because we feel that there was something wrong with us. They went to look for somebody out there. So we do need to allow ourselves to also learn how our mind interprets what's happening within our environment, so that we stop owning the choices of other people. Even if it is a betrayal, it is never about you. It is always about the person who betrayed you. But when we embrace and we say it's because of me, because I'm a bad person, because I'm not then that's where shame begins to grow, and it will show up in many, many other ways that we can talk about later. So life choices like sex outside marriage, abortions, addictions, we feel that there's something wrong with us. We feel a lot of guilt that makes us feel that there is no recompense, there is no relief, and therefore we enter into shame. And again, remember what I said, shame has something to do with helplessness and powerlessness, or the feeling out of control. And number two, it has something to do with that there is something wrong with me and I cannot be helped. And then work stress, when you have narcissistic bosses, and what is narcissism? Narcissism is basically lack of empathy for another. So when you have a boss who is also humiliating you, they are really treating you badly, and they are not considering where you are coming from, what is happening to you, how you are experiencing your work environment. When you come to them with an issue, they are not willing to listen and understand where you are coming from. You will have very high levels of work stress. And remember, again, you go back into, why does he treat me like this? Why does she treat me like this? And so then you enter again into a space of shame, helplessness, and powerlessness, and feeling that you have absolutely no control. Let's go to the next one. Now, let's talk about types of shame. So transient shame is feeling embarrassed when you make a mistake in public. Usually, it will not turn out into an inward feeling of being flawed. It quickly passes. It's that embarrassment. There are things that I remember throughout my life, and I remember them, and I feel I feel embarrassed. But those things passed on because I did not turn them into a personal attack. In my mind, I was able to look at it, oh, it's embarrassing, but then I moved on. So that's why it's transient. You feel it, you see it, but then you let it go. Then chronic shame or internal shame is a feeling and a belief that stays with one all the time. It triggers feelings of unworthiness and can impair your functioning and mental health, usually rooted in childhood experiencing woundedness and what we call ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. And so that usually the way you can know somebody, the actions that come from chronic shame or internal shame is anger, where we cannot control our feelings of anger. Now, if you are not an aggressive person, you will turn it inward. So we have the people who feel their emotions and they explode, and then we have the people who feel their emotion and they implode. And when somebody is saying, I need to do anger management, I cannot control my anger, I always tell them, it means that we have to deal with things in the past and down there, so that we figure out what happened to you that you developed, whatever it is that triggers this high level of intensity for the emotion you are feeling, and you cannot control it. Then moral shame is usually exposure of your moral flaws. Now, I will say this, for people who struggle with addictions, whether addictions are many, whatever addiction you struggled with, it has a root in moral shame. And moral shame is where I feel that I am weak in these areas of my life, and therefore, because I feel helpless to change those areas of my life, then I begin to feel that there is something wrong with me. It is wrong for me to have flaws. Now, until I get to the point where I have to ask myself, this abuse, this substance abuse, this addiction that I have, I need to figure out what is it that I am covering? What is it that I am looking for? This thing that I keep repeating, and even though I feel shame about, I can't stop it. I need to find out the root cause of it, because if I don't do that, I will not know what it is solving, because addictions are actually, most of the time, they are a solution to something. And so it's an escape for me. It's a coping mechanism. Humiliation, another person embarrassing you for your mistakes. It's now I usually tell a story. When I was in class 7, I went to school, and those of us who went to school during my days in the 80s, what would happen every Friday, maybe Monday and Friday, I think, or sometimes it was every day. Whenever you go to the parade and you have the parade, they would check your hygiene, they would check your uniform, your cleanliness. And so I didn't have my school uniform. I was wearing a black dress, and my hair used to be very, very that hair that you cannot comb. It was very, very painful, and so I had not combed my hair that morning. And when the headmaster came to me, I'll never forget, I even know his name. I was in class 7 many years ago. So I was probably around 12. And so he comes to where I am, and then he looks at me and he says, he looks at me and he says, "Look at you, you look like a dead person." He proceeds, "Hii nywele yako, this hair of yours," and he put a scissors into my hair and made a sign of a cross. You know, he went down and then he went across like that. So you can imagine, in front of the whole school and the teachers, I was so humiliated. And my mother tells me, because I can't remember, my mother tells me that I did not wear a black dress for a very long time. And so these are some of the things that can cause a person to really feel bad about themselves. And sometimes today we are reacting to things that happened to us a long time ago, and then our brain has never been able to resolve it, so it stays in our memory brain. And when something similar happens, we are triggered. The reaction to this trigger of today is so huge, because it came and met the old one that we have never dealt with, and then we react in a way. Then later on we are asking ourselves, why did we react like that? We can go to the next slide, Noeline. So be thinking about this, because these are the points where you say to yourself, I really need to do a personal development process through a therapist. So personal development, most of the time people are looking to know their purpose and to know stuff like that. But personal development also means I need to go through a space where I'm self-aware. And self-awareness means I can allow my therapist to guide me to know myself, to know deeper, to have a deeper understanding of who I am and how life has shaped me to what I am. So we also have yes.
I think I just want to say I am so sorry. Even before we move to the next, I am so sorry that was done to you. Paul Isana.
Yeah. So then the other part here, when we are talking about and thank you so much, Noeline. Thank you. So when we are talking about the other things that can be types of shame is defeat and failure. We might feel ashamed when we failed or got defeated. For example, failure is to pass an exam or win a competition. You may feel shame in the loss. So there is something wrong with me. Now, let me give another personal experience. When I was in class 4, I changed schools. And we moved from one school and I went to another. I used to love performing. I loved singing. I was always either in a Sunday school choir. I was doing something. I loved the arts. And so we moved to a new primary school, and I was so excited to try out for the choir. So I went and I tried and I failed, and they refused to give me a do-over. I was so disappointed that for the rest of my life, I realized this when I was going through my healing journey, that I realized that from then on, I was constantly getting into any type of singing group, and I was trying to prove that I can sing. And and it is very, very interesting to realize that actually from the age from when I was around 22 Apple, and until probably when I was 35, I was always on a worship team. I led worship for so long, where I was actually a lead worship leader. But you see, the thing was, what I didn't realize, that I was trying to correct the mistake of when I was 10. Because that mistake caused me to feel shame, and I needed to correct it. And so all that, now I look back, if today you tell me to lead worship, I actually don't have a desire to do that. But those days, if I am in a group and they call someone else to lead worship and I'm there, I would feel so overlooked and it would bother me. But now I healed it, so I no longer do that. In fact, I even wrote songs. I still have my songs somewhere, but now I don't have to prove anything to anyone. But I realized during my healing process that that's why I was so passionate about worship leadership and singing. And it's because it wasn't necessarily a talent per se or a passion. No, it was really rooted in that desire to correct the shame that came from the defeat and the failure to join the choir. Now, social anxiety can trigger shame that strangers might find that there is something wrong with me. Therefore, what is going to happen when I'm in a group of people? I feel a lot of anxiety. I feel fear, but I can't tell where it's coming from. Again, we have to go back and say, why you humiliated? It starts at home. Wewe hupendi kusalimia watu. What is wrong with you? When you don't like people, when we start to be told that, and you see some of us who are melancholic, we are generally shy. There is nothing wrong with being shy. It's just part of a personality trait. And some of us, I am going to be shy in a group until I know people, and then I loosen up. So when parents see that, if you have a sanguine mother and she sees that, she starts to judge and criticize your introvertedness. And so we develop social anxiety. Now, there are some people, well, that social anxiety will show in many ways. So if you are a melancholic choleric, for instance, so cholerics are very extroverted. The melancholic is not that extroverted. They are social, but then they need their me time. So what happens is that we, in order to cope with the anxiety of being judged because we are quiet, what do? We become chatty. We allow the choleric us to take charge, or the sanguine part of us to take charge. And so even understanding yourself, that self-awareness journey I'm talking about. And I need to say here, Noeline, that I do offer 12 sessions of personal healing journey, where we talk about now self-awareness, we talk about what happened to you and how it has impacted who you are today, so that now you can have clarity, you can have insight, and you can begin to live your life authentically. That's why my hashtag is Live by Design. And if you're going to design your future, your life right now, you've got to know the foundations. What kind of foundation do I have, so that I can correct what I need to correct and put new materials that are going to create the kind of foundation that I can now build on to build the kind of life that I want. Then performance shame, we know that. Feeling panicked during public speaking, fearing humiliation, maybe triggered by critical parents about mistakes that were met with threatening or humiliation or character attack. Now, let me say here, I need to do a caveat. I am not really demonizing our parents. What I'm saying is that there is a way that socially, in our social settings, whether it is a family of origin or wherever it is, our parents are also a product of a family of origin somewhere. And so when we are thinking about generational transmission of dysfunction or generational transmission of morality, values, or even emotional regulation, how we deal with emotion. It is actually coming from these generations. In the Bible, it talks about generational curses that that it goes way back into fourth generation. In our marriage and family therapy textbooks, we were told when you do what we call a genogram or a family tree, you go 4 generations back so that you can be able to map the dysfunctions, the strengths, and other things about the family, so you can be able to help the current family you are dealing with or the current person that is in your counseling room. So I'm not by any means demonizing our parents. I'm saying that there are things our parents learned from their parents and they dealt with that the same way. So their shame became ours, and the shame of their parents came from their grandparents, because nobody is perfect. And so when we are willing to be vulnerable about what we experienced with our parents without judging them, without demonizing them, but expressing an experience, then we can change the transmission to the next generation. It will be a different one. So let's go to the next one.
Grace, I find it interesting that you've mentioned this. I think one of the, when you talk about passing on generational dysfunctions, one of the ones that I've had actually runs across pretty much most of the tribes in the country is when, as children, you would break something in the house, and instead of being told you've done the wrong thing, you should have done A, B, C, D, this, you will be told, break all of them, even this one that is here, come, take, break. You know, vunja zote. Hata hizi zenye ziko kwa kabati kuja uchukue vunja. And in Kikuyu, you'd be told, oraka sio there. Unasikia si iko oraka. You know.
Yes, and you know that is what we now call poor communication. You see, because children are very, so a child is confused because children are very concrete. So what do you mean? Do you mean I go ahead and break them, or what are you trying to say? You have seen those reels that talk about na nikienda mchukue mtoto mchome. So the communication styles also, they are communicating shame even without us realizing. And then that person who is communicating shame is also acting out of a space of shame. So shame can really cause us not to have the skills to socially connect on an honest level. And you see, honesty, transparency, openness creates safety. And safety, when I feel safe with a person, I trust them, you see. And therefore, if there is trust, there is safety, and therefore we will have interpersonal relationships that are healthy and they are honest. Now, a healthy relationship does not mean there is no conflict. A healthy relationship means that we have the safety and the trust that whatever I tell you, you can handle it. You see, that you can hold space for me. And that is what we need to understand. Healthy relationships it doesn't mean that there is no conflict, because conflict is good. It's an opportunity for growth. But all of us, we are socialized to believe that conflict is bad because of how we saw it in our homes, at our workplace, in our schools, within our friendships. People, one time, Noeline, when I was now healing, I said to God, I want you to teach me how to walk away from relationships that are not helpful for me without creating a crisis. You see, many of us, if we feel that we need to walk away from a friendship, we have to be angry at them for us to walk away. When we can really just say, look, me, I like you, we have come a long journey, and I know there are so many things I have learned with you, have enjoyed life with you, but now we are on different paths. And now I am not able to continue with this friendship the way it used to be. That is a very honest, open, vulnerable. But now what we do, we create a crisis, ndio tukasirikiane, tuache kuongeleshana na hiyo friendship ikwishi. You see what I'm saying, Noeline?
Yeah. African
Yeah,
way
so
of communicating, saying the opposite of what you mean.
Yes, absolutely. And that is, again, issues of conflict management and skill sets in conflict resolution or management, plus communication, effective communication. So other types of shame is unrequited love, where shame results from breakups and causes one to feel not being good enough for another person. And this is one of the things, if we do not heal from unrequited love, we will repeat this pattern. Because shame tells us there is something wrong with you. So the next time we meet another person, then we feel very lucky to have met someone, because we had believed, I'm so bad, nobody will want me. And therefore, when we feel there is somebody who wants me, we jump into it even without thinking whether this is good for me or not. The fact that they want me makes me feel special, and so I jump in there. You see, without really understanding whether this is good for me or not. And then exclusion, shame, feeling discriminated against while you are within a group, triggers feelings of not belonging, which is so important, because if you feel you do not belong, you are going to likely trauma bond. So as long as somebody is accepting of me, I don't question their character. I don't question their motives. I just go with it. Or I feel that, or feeling that I'm not good enough for the group. Feeling left out, social stigma due to different existential situations, like what I now said, like being a single parent, coming from a single parent home, being of a certain tribe, or being of a certain body shape, or even your skin color. All these things, they cause exclusion, shame, and it's important for us to know that. Finally, healthy shame can also exist. Shame can be healthy when it causes you to have humility, always allows you to laugh at yourself, makes you humble, or teaches you about boundaries. Without at least a little bit of shame, people would have trouble measuring the effects of their behaviors on other people. So there is healthy shame, and this is what that website called verywellmind.com, this is the way they look at it. Healthy shame, it's ni ile aibu ya kufanya ubaya. These days we keep saying that that people have no shame. So there is healthy shame, where when I do something and I see how it affects other people, that shame takes me into a space where I say, I don't want people to experience me like that. And therefore, I am going to find a way to change. So I'm going to work on my humility instead of arrogance. I'm going to work to be able to laugh at myself instead of judging myself. I'm going to be humble. The humility and humble is the same. I am going to teach myself how to have boundaries in the way I speak, or I am going to ask people not to cross my boundaries, so that we can have relationships that are healthy. So I hope that makes sense when I talk about healthy shame. So let's go to the next one. I can see we only have 4 minutes. So effects of shame, very important. And maybe, Noeline, we will have to think about doing an extra class on specific steps on how to overcome shame. Now, Noeline, I think you have come to realize the way that I do my teachings. I usually start with the root, and I start also with how and the definitions before I get to the point where I'm telling people how to overcome it. You see?
Yeah.
Because my belief is that all of us, we have the ability to change our lives. It's only that we do not understand how we got where we are. You see? So if I come and tell you, for you to overcome people pleasing, you need to start saying no. Then you do it for 1 month, and then you cannot be consistent anymore. So I need to tell you why. you have codependency issues and people pleasing, so that you can know this is where it started and I need to start to think differently about myself and about the world, so that I can make choices that will stop the codependency and the people pleasing. Does it make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. It does, Grace. It does build a proper and a sound foundation. And I just
Yes.
want to say, take your time. Don't rush through it. Just based on
Yeah.
your time schedule, take your time. Let's just go through it, because I think there's a
All
lot
right.
of value in what you say.
Yes. So people pleasing, basically, others are more important than me. I need to fix things so that everybody is happy. And therefore, if everybody is happy, I'm going to be safe. Every one of us have a degree of people pleasing. There is people pleasing that is acceptable, because then is what we call accommodating other people. And accommodating other people is a social skill, is a healthy social skill, that I'm able to not only think that I'm the only one who knows, but then we don't want to. People pleasing is where I say my opinion and what I need is not important. And so I am going to negate it so that I can meet other people's needs, so that we can live in harmony or we can stay connected. That is not healthy accommodating. That is denying yourself, denying your needs so that you can please others, which leads to resentment, and it also leads to bitterness. And if you have resentment and bitterness, you're going to develop depression and anxiety. The fear of the unknown is anxiety. Depression is a low view of yourself. So others are better than me, poor me. And you get into that victim mentality. Irrational guilt is where you rationalize people pleasing. So you feel guilty and you say, hey, maybe it's because of what I did. That's why they chose to do that. There is a healthy way, which is what we call relational focus of conflict, where you are saying that I do own my part. But most of us with irrational guilt, we own my part and my partner's part. We tell our children, how could you do this to us? What will people think of us? What kind of parent will they think I am? Your teachers, what will they think I am? You see, that is irrational guilt. I'm owning my problem and my child's problem, and I'm not giving this child opportunity to also feel the guilt so that they can also learn how not to do what they did. Then complacency is the fear of conflict. It is much easier to give in than to deal with conflict, because we think that conflict is bad, it's going to harm us, and it's going to harm the relationship. And that is not a good way to live, because then I will perpetuate shame. Let's go to the next one. Now, codependency is a dysfunctional relationship pattern stemming from low self-worth and lack of individuation. So we become, by the way, people who are called narcissists, this is one of their problems, even though they look like they are very independent, because the reason why in narcissism there is a lot of control is because you have to be an extension of me. You cannot be an individual. If you are in a relationship with me, whether you are my child or my spouse, you have to think and live like me in order for me to feel okay. So what is going to happen is that we are having this, we're having this thing that we are all enmeshed, and you cannot be an individual. Parents, we do that to our children because we have these high levels of anxiety that our children will do something bad. The community will think we are not good Christians or we are not good parents, and so we control. And that is not a good way. That is codependency. And so there is denial and avoidance, becoming attached to solving people's problems, enabling and rescuing others. We are not allowing people to hit rock bottom so they can find their way up. Before they hit rock bottom, we pick up. And they are not children. Grown people, they are making their choices. We need to allow them to feel the consequence of their choice. And then people pleasing, someone goes to the extremes to make other people happy, often at their own expense. How they have trouble saying no. They worry about what other people think of them. They tend to be passive and don't voice their own opinions. They take care of everyone else needs before their own, and they judge themselves harshly. Now, I need to say here that most of the times, these things that people pleasers and codependent individuals do, they look like kindness, compassion, and empathy. The problem is when you are doing that outside of yourself, but you neglect yourself, you end up becoming a person who is absolutely not happy with life. And now you are going to go into helplessness, powerlessness, and hopelessness. And now we have to deal with you having mental health issues, and the whole family is having to deal with that. So whatever it was that you wanted to protect the family from, you are not, it actually comes, it becomes the reality that you live with. So allowing yourself to go through your healing process, your self-awareness process, so that you can identify codependency and people-pleasing tendencies, so that now you can create a healthy space of having relationships, then you are going to be healthy and people are going to be healthier, because you are not rescuing them and you are not overlooking that which they need to correct. Let's go to the next one. This one now is narcissism. Now, a lot of us these days, we are labeling each other narcissist and all that. Now, I want to say this. There is what we call healthy narcissism, because narcissism is basically your ego, and your ego is you, is who you are. What healthy narcissism means is that I am compassionate, I am accepting, I am respectful, and I have high esteem for myself, or I should say healthy esteem for myself, not at the expense of others, but I am doing that for myself and within myself, so that people around me can experience the fullness of who I authentically am. So that when they come and they hear me say XYZ, tomorrow they do not find out that was supposed to be ABC. I am authentic, I have integrity, and I'm walking in truth. That is what healthy narcissism is. Now, unhealthy narcissism, where you are idolizing yourself, you have grandiosity. This is where you think that somebody thinks that they are the God's gift to the world. So this is the positive distortion of self-love. It's really self-idolizing, self-absorption in this huge way, in this open way, where I feel like I'm the one who has all the answers. I'm the best thing that has happened into the world. I'm always looking at myself and admiring how beautiful, how good I look. I talk about these things I have done. And sometimes I am telling a lie. I am whatever it is, I'm making this reality here look like this big thing. And I create an image of myself that is very grandiose. On the other hand, the other unhealthy narcissism is the vulnerable narcissist. The vulnerable narcissist is rooted in victimizing themselves. They are self-hating, and they have a negative distortion of self-love. So they are very self-absorbed, but in a negative way. Oh, if you leave me, I'm going to commit suicide. Oh, if you are not going to do this, then you don't love me. Oh, then so this person is so self-absorbed, but it is in self-hatred. So both the unhealthy narcissism, they need the assurance of people outside of themselves to help them and to make them feel worthy, to make them feel that they are people of value. Now, the healthy narcissism is that I know myself, I accept myself the way I am, and therefore, when I make mistakes, I don't go into self-hatred. I don't go into self-idolization where I blame other people for my things. I want to come in here and say, I have self-compassion. I made a mistake. I have self-acceptance. I made a mistake. I'm not perfect and it's okay. And I have self-respect where I'm able to treat myself with love, with compassion and empathy. And I do not rely on other people to tell me how good I am. I hope it is making sense. And so the shame can also trigger narcissism to these negative levels, but healthy shame can trigger healthy narcissism because I'm constantly growing and I'm constantly accepting my flaws and not seeing them as an end and not seeing them as a label. I am seeing them as opportunities for growth. Let's go to the next one. All right. So I'm not going to repeat all of this, but because this is going to be a recording, you can also look at it. So normal narcissism is where we have adaptive and flexible traits. So I feel bad about myself, but in the next few hours, I am up and I'm correcting what went bad. Normal narcissism, semi-flexible traits, strategic intelligence, visionary, leader, and partner. These are people who, again, they feel the mistakes, they feel the guilt, but they do not go into shame. They are able, and they don't, because usually grandiose narcissist or the vulnerable one, it's all rooted in shame. A fear, if you find out how I am, you are going to, or if you find out my flaws for the grandiose narcissist, you are going to leave me. Or now the vulnerable narcissist is thinking, now that you know how flawed I am, you don't like me, you hate me, and so now you have to keep telling me how much, and you have to keep agreeing with me for me to know that you are not rejecting me. So I hope that makes sense. So semi-rigid traits, emotionally shallow. Have you ever met people who are like that? Lacks empathy, sense of entitlement. We see this quite a bit with parents who are, who are in that space of self. They don't really, they need their children. You need to show me that you appreciate what the trouble I went to give birth to you, to take you to school, by making sure every time I ask for money, you give it to me. If every time, but if I ask and you don't, I start talking about the way I did, the way I carried you, the way nobody cares about me, everybody is going on with their, that is, it's not healthy. Clinical narcissism, this is now what we call NPD. Absence of conscience, that where people are not feeling the pain of others or the joys of others. Pathological need for power and control, manipulation for profit or amusement, win at all costs, sadistic, streak, they enjoy other people's pain. Now, I will tell you this. When I was training in developmental psychology, we started talking about childhood mental disorders. And one of the things that we had as a trait, children who are young, especially boys, when they are between the ages of 0 to 10, and they enjoy setting fires for fun. They enjoy torturing cats and mouses and animals just for fun. And then they laugh, they have a big laugh. You need to watch that child, because that is people who enjoy to see other people in pain. And if you see that trait in your child between the ages of 7 and 13, you need to catch it very quickly and allow yourself to talk with that child and get them the help that they need, so that they don't develop, that is antisocial behavior, and it can grow. Because when they are younger, we call it oppositional defiant disorder. When they get into teenagehood, we call it conduct disorder, because they are constantly getting into trouble by choices they make. Kids who are burning schools, and they do that, they create the thing, they plan the thing, they are masterminds of those. We need to watch them, and we need to really get to know what is going on in their brain, because they are the people who now become what we call antisocial or pathological people within the society, and they cannot dwell with other human beings. Now, all of this is rooted in shame. There is something wrong with me, and I will never be able to change. Let's go next. All right, so this is something that I just added, and I think this is my last slide. I just added, are you a narcissist? And those are traits of narcissism: self-centeredness, sense of entitlement or superiority, lack of empathy, manipulation or controlling, strong need for admiration, difficulty taking feedback, and easily wounded. We all need to take time to look at these traits and ask myself, what is the degree within me? Where does it usually show up? Does it show up with my children? Does it show up at school? Does it show up with my partner? Does it show up at, in my area? Even people who are born again and we are serving in the ministry, are there some of these traits that are showing up? Because growing into a person who is healthy and is sound in their thinking and in their emotional regulation, it's a process. And that process must start because you are looking in every time you are triggered by something outside of yourself. Allow yourself to sit with it and ask, by the way, why is this bothering me so much? If you are afraid of doing something because somebody is going to say, don't say people will say. Identify who is the specific people that you think they will say, so that you can begin to live your life authentically, but intentionally and consciously. You are not repeating. Like now, my headmaster was called Mr. Kahero. So I'm not refusing to wear a black dress today because Mr. Kahero's humiliation is still in my brain. And I'm still, every time I think about it, I act as if it is happening right now. This is now the process of healing, where I'm able to say that what happened a long time ago, it had nothing to do with a black dress. Actually, it had nothing to do with me. He was triggered by me and he reacted. And that the way he reacted was not correct, even though I made mistakes. That was not a socially acceptable way of dealing with a child. Even if he wanted to punish me for that, he didn't have to humiliate me in front of everyone. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Grace, for sharing that. As you're talking about Mr. Kihoro, you reminded me of in standard. It's interesting how you even remember the point in your development where you were. So for me, it was in standard 1, and we had this whole event going on in school, and I asked to go to the washroom, and I forgot to arrange my clothes properly. So I had the one edge of my uniform sticking out of my still tucked into my innerwear. And I walked from the washroom all the way to where the standard 1 students were sitting. And I sat down and I was okay. Then this male teacher approaches me and tells me, stand up. So I stand up. As in, I don't know what's going on. I stand up. And I'm not in stockings, note. And he tells me, look at your desk. So the whole school, I'm in class 1. Class 1, all they just turn and they look at this child like, and everybody starts laughing. That's when I noticed, oh my God. Oh my God. And they started arranging my clothes. So I was like, okay, why couldn't you? Now in retrospect is when I'm thinking, why couldn't he have sent a female teacher to correct me while I was seated down? Why did I have to stand up for the whole school to see me? And as we're talking about it is when I've realized, very recent incident. Today morning, my nanny was telling me we need a mirror in one of my children's rooms. And she was telling me, we just need a small one, just, so he can see himself the top side. And I was like, no, we need a full-size mirror. He needs to see himself from the top to the bottom. And now is when I've realized I'm actually subconsciously reliving the incident in class 1 in trying to protect my child from going through that by saying, full-length mirror, check yourself before you leave.
Yes.
And even now, I have a sticker in my washroom on toilet rules and telling my children, before you leave that washroom, you must inspect yourself. Where are your clothes? Did you arrange your clothes before you leave? Oh my God. No, listening to this one, I'm like, my goodness, it's such a spiral. If you don't catch it, you don't even realize what the trigger for some of the things you're doing is.
Yes. Very interesting. Yeah. You see why we go to school.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah.
I see we are well above time, and I love how you presented appreciated today's because you've answered most of the questions. I have like
Mm.
5 I want to ask, but I'm also conscious of time. And I just want to
Yes.
ask, do you have time for this or do we pack it for another session?
Now, what we would, if there are burning questions, maybe you can send them to me and I can answer on WhatsApp and you can post on your WhatsApp group, because I have a fellowship tonight I need to go to. Yes.
Understand.
Yeah, but it has
Thank
been a joy, and people can feel free to reach out to me. I think, I have a website, and that's how you reach out to me. There is a WhatsApp number. You can chat us on the WhatsApp number, or you can reach out to us. Look at my website; it will tell you how to get in touch with me. And please remember what you can do today. Don't wait tomorrow, because tomorrow never comes. And what
Yeah.
you can do today can change the trajectory of the rest of your life. Psychological health is very, very important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Grace, for sharing that. Out of respect for time, I will ask that we close off at this point in time. Thank you, everyone who has
Yes.
been able to join us this evening. And thank you to anyone and everyone who is going to be catching the recording. Let's not gatekeep. If you have access to this, please do share it with your network so everybody can be able to benefit. That said, have a fantastic evening. I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.